I didn't want to just brand products. I wanted to rewrite stories of human beings, of people like me and you, who are going through so much, but they really don't have someone who can, whom they can really vent with, or have someone, listen to you. And I think
Right.
I wanted to be that person, and I really wanted to make a difference.
So if you can explain the kind of clients you work with today.
I work with anyone who is ready to trade excuses for excellence. They come
Yeah.
to me for direction, they come to me for clarity and focus. And in order to get that, you need to clear the haze, right? And sometimes the haze could be their own behaviors, which probably the world is saying wah, 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 wah. But actually, it's not a wah, wah behavior, because it's probably getting them into a quicksand. They know that they're procrastinating,
Sure.
but they say, no, 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 I want it to be perfect. Perfection is the cause of procrastination. So a lot of people say, you should not be very invested in your, coaches and clients and all. But I think that's not possible. I'm invested in them because their victory is my victory.
So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 50th episode of this podcast, Business Networking with Vipul Bondal. And to make the 50th episode truly special, I have somebody really, really special sitting in front of me today. On the screen, of course, I would love to sit in front of her in person, but today we'll have to manage by doing this online. So please help me welcome Farzana Suri, victory coach. I will tell you a little bit about her, but please bear with me as I introduce Farzana Suri. So Farzana Suri isn't just a name. She is a force field of clarity in a world fogged by doubt. She is the woman people call when life's script gets blurry and they are ready to rewrite with victory. She's a former advertising professional. She has worked for leading advertising firms like Dakuna Associates, Image Ads, Euro RSCG, and Low in the good old 90s and early 2000s. Now she's a victory coach, motivational speaker, and a leadership trainer. She has successfully coached over, hold your breath, 10,000 clients in 27 countries in this period. With a deep understanding of human behavior, she leverages the power of coaching to facilitate mental shifts necessary for lasting change, focusing on empowering both individuals and groups to achieve their personal and professional goals. She's the rare blend of a coach who is part mystic, and that's interesting, part strategist, and all heart. A woman who's cracked the code of influence without shouting. That's interesting again. Who wears her compassion like a crown and isn't afraid to cut through fluff to tell you the truth that will set you free and probably change your life. Farzana is a globe-trotting speaker, soft-spoken firebrand. Let's figure that out. Urdu is in her blood. That's interesting again. And victory in her voice. She's a cat lover, born into the family of poets. Her great 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 grandfather was the celebrated national poet Mir Anis. Her mantra in life: of the things you will ever win, a heart must mean the most. Farzana doesn't just motivate, she moves minds, moods, missions. Welcome to the podcast, Farzana.
Thank you so much, Vipul. Happy to be here and excited to get on a conversation with you.
Right. So, when I shared the information that I'm going to be talking to you, one of the questions which came to me is victory coach. This is something nobody we've not heard before. So what's a victory coach? So if you can tell us, then we can, and
Yep.
what is the role of a victory coach?
Great. Thank you for that. I get asked that very often.
I'm sure.
And well, since I'm from advertising,
Right.
when I pivoted into this the space of coaching and training, more due to, I would say, a lot of heartbreak, and I was jobless, and I was
Okay.
almost invisible in the life that I was leading.
Right.
And I discovered that victory comes from within, no
Right.
matter what happens. And this is not just my story, it's the story of everyone. If I had to ask you, or our you know our people on this podcast as well, they would all resonate with that. So to me, as a coach, I'm here to inspire you to win in life.
Right.
And I firmly believe that victory is not on the outside, it is within.
Okay.
And I say this because also, victory happens the moment you reclaim your power,
Right.
you speak your truth, and you have the resilience to stand up and take responsibility for your life. And to me, that is what a victory coach is. It's also a nomenclature that has been coined by a very good friend
Okay.
who, having seen my life's trajectory, suggested don't just be a leadership coach, a life coach, or whatever. How about branding yourself and calling yourself the victory coach? And
Victory coach.
that's how it kind of stuck. And I think that's what we're all looking for eventually, isn't it?
Right. A very good friend actually asked me this. So if he's watching this, you know who you are. So this is the answer why victory coach. So, you kind of partly answered why you took this up, right? You had a very, very illustrious career in advertising,
Yeah.
almost 20 years plus in advertising, I think.
About 16 years.
16 years. So,
Yeah.
uh, can you kind of explain when that pivoting or that shift happened and what prompted it? Because, you know, being from a similar background, I know it's not easy. Especially when you're used to a certain kind of workplace and things like that, I mean, how did that happen?
Vipul, I feel that, when you are to move into a certain direction,
Right,
the universe is already nudging you towards it. I
right,
remember I used to sit at meetings. I mean, I loved advertising. I still love advertising. But, towards the end, I always found there was something missing for me. Not
right,
necessarily for anyone, but for me, I just felt there was something that was missing. And I just couldn't resonate anymore with what I was doing. I mean, meeting with clients and having anyone and everyone comment on how great an ad is or how not so good it is, and how this color has to be there, and how this logo has to be this big, and how this word needs to actually be spelled this way, etc., etc. And I
right,
just felt I used to get this outer body experience, that I'm just watching this as if it's a film running in front of me, and I just
right,
couldn't relate to this life that I was leading. And I suspect during that time I got into a lot of self development.
right,
So I was also going through a certain period and phase of my life, which wasn't very, happy, I would say.
okay,
And that's how you kind of lean towards something like this. And while I was doing that, I felt that this was more about healing me and making me ready for the person I was going to be later. And I didn't see advertising fit into it at all. However, I did see every learning in advertising fitting into whatever I was going to do later. Because
right,
I mean, right now, I always lean back into my experience, into everything that I've done so far in advertising. I keep borrowing from
right.
that well, even now.
Sure,
So
sure.
yeah, I mean, that's what made me realize that my path is somewhere else. And I've always been a people's person. I was
Right.
in account management. Um,
Okay.
so, so it just seemed natural to move into, coaching and mentoring and training, because it just seemed like the most
And it happened
great.
along the way. I mean, it's not like you chose
It
it.
happened along the way. So if I have to put it in a nutshell, I just felt that I didn't want to just brand products. I wanted to
Ah,
rewrite stories of human beings, of people like me and you, who are going through so much, but they really don't have someone who can, whom they can really vent with, or just, have someone, listen to you. And I think
right.
I wanted to be that person, and I really wanted to make a difference.
Okay, that's interesting. So, what kind of clients do you work with? I mean, are there any specific types of clients that you work with, or your clients are? I mean, so if you can explain, the kind of clients do you work with today?
So interesting question, because I work with anyone who is ready to trade excuses for excellence.
Okay,
It's very
that's a
important,
nice way of putting it. Yeah.
because because coaching, okay, a coaching, mentoring, this is a space where there has to be buy-in first from the person who is
Mm,
entering into this relationship.
mm,
I'm already in, so it's important that they need to, because when you coach someone, you're actually pushing them towards excellence. You're really pushing them out of the space that they're in, into the
right,
space that they've never perhaps been in. They would
right,
desire to, but they haven't. So the kind of people I work from are people who, who are who are resilient enough, who really want to bring about that change. There may be fear, absolutely fine. We can work together on fear, but
Mm.
they need to understand that this is a collaborative process. So I also at least now I kind of consciously filter the people that I work with, because it's very important that people who are really interested, really want to bring in the change. We work together in that. So basically, so I've worked with entrepreneurs, I've worked with a lot of corporate executives, CXOs. I work with some, people in the media and entertainment space,
Yeah.
and of course, athletics.
Okay. Okay. So I'm sure the kind of people who come to you are more or less already tuned that they want to, make changes to their way of doing things. I wouldn't say
Right.
necessarily lifestyle, but
Yeah.
change of doing things. But do you actually think that when people come to you and they say they're ready for whatever you get them to do, or is that a challenge that you face?
So sometimes I find people coming in. Of course, they come in when there are self doubts. Yeah.
Right.
When they're working in a toxic environment, they know that they're or a turbulent marriage or a relationship,
Correct.
and they know that they're going through something which they are unable to handle.
Hmm.
Okay. But what happens initially, there's always that little, trepidation, that because the thing about coaching is you've got to open yourself
Right.
and you got to allow that person in the circle of trust, right?
Right.
Because you're going to be sharing so many things that you would perhaps never share with anyone, you
Yeah.
know and to me, that is where the defining moment comes in, because in the kind of questions that I ask, in the way I work with them,
Hmm.
create a safe space for them, so that their crippling self doubts actually become like boot camps, so that they are
Ah,
able to face. So I need to show them the mirror, right? I need to show them the mirror, what
correct.
exactly
Correct.
is happening. I cannot pussyfoot on it. I cannot be, I cannot sugarcoat it. But at the same time, I need to bring in the warmth. I need to answer powerful questions, ask powerful questions, so that they are
Correct.
able to break through those mental blocks. And what I do is I leave them with action points that are very doable. And
Mhm.
everything begins with baby steps, right? So even if you've
Right.
done like a 1% shift, you've actually made a difference. And I think this is what my clients understand are, and work around. So yes.
Right, right. So yeah, so I mean, I think that's the key point, right? I mean, that making that shift maybe on a ongoing basis. It may be a
Yes,
daily change, or it could be, yeah. So I mean, and then obviously will depend on client to client, person to person.
absolutely.
So, one of the things that struck me about, while reading up and researching about you was the fact that you said it's no BS. So, if you can
Hmm.
just, tell us why you say with no BS,
Yeah.
because I think for the listeners and for the people
Hmm.
who joined us on the podcast, I think this is also important. Where is it that they get BS'd? And, and how do we recognize the BS when we see it?
As a coach, I think it's important that I be honest with my coaches.
Right.
Every client who comes to me in faith. Most of them come to me through a referral,
Right.
and it's important that I respect that trust, because they come to me for a solution. They come to
Right.
me for direction. They come to me for clarity and focus. And in order to get that, you need to clear the haze, right? And sometimes the haze could be their own behaviors, which probably the world is saying, wah, 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 wah. But actually, it's not a wah, wah behavior, because it's probably, kind of, getting them into a quicksand. So I need to be very honest with them. Of course, I don't do it with, I don't believe in creating a fear factor with them, but I do like to present the way things are in a very
Mhm.
realistic manner, so that they understand that, what, this particular behavior, this particular pattern that I'm going through is really not for me.
Right.
And I think that is what, when the way I say it, the way I present the facts with to
Right.
them, the way I uh, surmise from their conversations what exactly, and I kind of zero in on the actual challenge or the difficulty that they're going through. I mean, that in itself, is like
Is
is like a
is
eureka moment for
is the
them.
bonus.
and then they believe and they trust. And and like I said, I'm not into sugarcoating. I'm not
Right.
into sugarcoating at all. But at the same time, I'm not so hard, and because I believe that everything begins with the heart. you know
Right. Right.
you connect people with hearts, you win people with your heart, and if you are genuine and honest and authentic, I think people
True.
see through that.
True.
They see through the fact that you really care, or are you just mouthing some words. And
Right.
to me, so I am pretty, so a lot of people say, you should not be very invested in your coaches and clients and all, but I think that's not possible. I am
True.
invested in them. I'm invested in them because their victory is my victory. When
Correct.
they win, I win. And I think that's very important for me to see them win, so that,
Mhm.
I also feel great about the fact that, hey, I was instrumental in some tiny part of that person's life.
Okay. So let's get to the brass tacks in terms of,
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of people would be interested in knowing. So what are the various techniques that, you use? So I know for a fact the numerology is one of
Yes.
those, but I think
Yes,
it's
that is
not
my
limited
that
to
is my
that, right?
Jedi saber.
That's your Jedi saver. So, what are your, I mean, so, uh, I know you've kind of got yourself certified in a whole lot of
Yes.
techniques which, are part of this change process. So how do you which are the techniques that you use, or how do you go about it? I mean, I know it's a tough question to ask because you'll say it's different for different people, but then how do you do this? So what's your game plan?
So I think one of the biggest techniques that I use is from the University of Life.
Okay.
Okay. Having been through so much in my own personal life, professionally, personally, I kind of dig into that a lot. A lot of it is intuitive as well. So you may get certifications, and fantastic. I mean, because sometimes we need to have a structure in the way we
True. Absolutely.
operate. Anyone
Yeah.
can become a musician, anyone can become a tennis player, anyone can become a cricketer, but there is a technique that is needed for you so that you can become a more a strategic player, right?
True.
So
Absolutely.
I think for me, the University of Life definitely kind of cuts it for me, because
Right.
everything in my life that I've learned, I kind of bring that to the table. A lot of a lot of it is also intuitive. So intuitively, I know that for X person, I need to deal in a particular way. For Y person, I need to deal in a particular way, because, like I said, I straddle people in sports to people who are in media and entertainment, and they are like worlds apart. And
Right.
then because there's a certain kind of skill in with which they operate. Then entrepreneurs to a homemaker. I mean, it kind of straddles the entire universe, so to speak. So the thing that I use definitely, apart from this, is numerology for my one-on-one sessions, because this
Right.
gives me it's like a diagnostic tool for me. So I use it simply as a science. It's like, if I had to go to a doctor and say, hey, I don't know what's happening to me, but I'm not feeling very good. The first thing the
Right.
doctor is going to say, why don't you do some blood work?
Right.
Right, and then they will
Correct.
get an understanding for through those tests. Okay, this is where you're low, this is where you're high, this is what is fantastic, this is where you need to build on, etc., etc. So to me, numerology is that blood work. It
Okay.
gives me a
All right.
complete perspective about the person's strength, areas of weaknesses, what kind of potential they have, and right now in what landscape are they operating professionally and personally. Okay, so
Okay.
that, like I said, is my Jedi saber. All right,
Right.
but then I leave that at that. And then from here, what I do is then I apply coaching tools and techniques. Once I understand what is the challenge the coachee or the client is facing, and based on that, because you got to, if they have a stomach ache, you have to give them medication only for stomach ache, not for the other
Absolutely.
things that they're also talking about, right?
True.
So
Absolutely.
I look at the key challenge that they are coming to me for, and then I use coaching tools and techniques. So I've been a student of Tony Robbins, Marshall Goldsmith, Jack
Correct.
Canfield. So I borrow from a lot of their learnings and I apply it. So whether it's anger management, procrastination, maybe imposter syndrome, or inability to take decisions, I work around all of that through this
Right.
technique. And then of course there's NLP, and which I
Correct.
also
With you.
use.
So,
Yes.
I mean, some of those things that you mentioned, procrastination, imposter syndrome. So, do you typically have people come to you already knowing that, they have this situation, or you have to, diagnose it through them? I mean, typically, how does it happen? For some of us who follow
So,
these things,
yeah,
we kind of know, I think it's imposter syndrome. Oh, I think it's procrastination. But,
yeah,
for the general public or the, you know, Aam Admi, it is not that.
yeah.
Nobody comes to you with
They
you,
don't define it because, we are also in
मैं
denial.
procrastinate करता हूँ. In fact,
Most of the
most people
times, we
will
are in
say, I'm
denial.
trying. Yeah. They'll be
You
in
know,
denial.
yeah, most of the
Yeah.
times they are in denial. They know it is there. They know that they're procrastinating,
Sure.
but they'll say, no, 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 I want it to be perfect. But perfection is the cause of procrastination.
Yeah.
The moment you want to be perfect, then you're not willing yourself. And the reason why you want to be perfect is because you don't want rejection.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you don't want rejection because somewhere there was an episode of rejection perhaps, and that may not have gone very well with you.
Well, okay.
It may not have kept made you happy, obviously, right? So that residue remains. So anything that is related to that in that context suddenly becomes something that you don't want to venture in, right?
Yeah. True.
So many of them, when they come to me, some of them of course know that they have this
Yeah.
and they want to work on it. So some people really come and say, hey, you know what, I have a huge anger issue and
Hmm.
I need you to support me on that. Or some will
Correct.
say, hey, you know what, I'm absolutely indecisive. I sometimes I want to do this. Even while coming to you, I wanted to do this and wanted to go there and whatever. But then, I said, no, 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 I just got to go to her, So they
Hmm.
do know. And at times they're not able to define it. So in the course of our conversation, our sessions is when, this is this I mean, I can see it through when I kind of do the, like I said, when I do the analysis as well. But I don't like to depend only on the numbers. I also like to have engage, so that in the conversation I know exactly whether that's the drift. And once I know that, then and then I show them how it's possible to kind of move out of it, because it's only when you're aware will you want to do something about it, and
Correct.
you're inclined for change.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the beautiful part about everything that we've been speaking about is the sheer number of people you manage to touch and transform. I mean, somewhere, and I last heard it was 9,000, but now, when I was again researching about you recently, it said 10,000, and that's like really superb.
Yeah.
And, and these are 10,000 transformed, which means,
Yes.
a larger number of people whom you probably touched who are also on the way. So what's your next
Absolutely.
goal? What's your next goal? Is there a number goal that you work with, or it's number is a byproduct? So,
Number is a byproduct. Don't really work for numbers because the
right.
numbers can change. This year the number will be great. Next year the number may not be. But
Yeah.
that's not why you do what you do. Personally, if you ask me, I really want to leave this world with the feeling that I truly made a difference to whichever few people that I have ever engaged with, if I've ever come across with, if I've ever who've touched my life and I've touched theirs. I really want to leave the world. So a lot of people say, hey, so are you going to create a victory academy? Are you going to have are you going to scale up? I'm not too sure whether I want to do that at all.
Okay.
I don't want to do that. In my heart, I just want to meet as many people and see how much of a difference I can make. And people, one interesting thing is, and this I really got to know when we all went through COVID, etc. Right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
at that time it was all about, okay, this year I've done like 20 corporate sessions, and next year I want to do like 30 corporate sessions, training
Correct.
sessions. And you have these goals, right? Every year,
Correct.
January or whatever, we sit down, or April we sit down and revise them and look at it.
Correct.
And during COVID, I remember I realized that, what am I really running after? What am I really running after? Because it is not this. This is what we have been trained to do.
Right.
Okay. But what, as human beings, what we really want to do, and I guess even you with this podcast that you're doing, is only to see, can you make a difference in your own tiny way in people's lives, whether it is when you walk out of your office, you come down and you meet or you get into the corridor and get into the lift, you meet the lift man.
Yeah.
The moment you're able to smile at him and you change his life by with that one smile, because at that moment he really needed it or she really needed
Yeah.
it.
Correct.
I think that is the difference. And I realized that I'm into that game. I'm into that game. I really want to, if I could, I would like to hug the world and
Oh,
make
how
it better.
sweet. That's really
I would
nice. I
really
mean,
like to do that.
okay. So
Yeah.
we'll take a question which has come in on the
Yeah.
group. So this comes
Mm.
from Jenisha Patel. So
Uh-huh.
the question
Hi,
is,
Janish.
what's a mindset myth that you think actually holds people back?
The biggest, first of all, thank you so much, Janisha, for that question. In my view, the biggest myth is that you can't. Anyone who tells you that you can't, okay, or this shouldn't be done, or this mustn't be done, I don't think anybody has the right to say that to you. You got to make the decision yourself and ask yourself the most important question is, do you want to do it? Because it's only when you want to do something, you will go to the ends of the earth to make it happen, right? So I think that is the biggest myth that you can't.
And once you break that myth or you challenge that myth is when you actually open yourself up to a lot of the
Correct.
other things that matter.
Absolutely. So we put a lot of people who tell me, okay, now from an ad guru, you become a spiritual guru. And I was like, if you call it that, yeah. I mean, what's stopping you? No one's stopping you. You can be any guru you want. Just don't call
Correct.
yourself guru because we are still
Yeah.
in the space. I think I'm still a shishya, no matter till my dying day, I will be a shishya, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
And if you stay in that space, I mean, you can only learn, you can only, embrace, and you can only absorb more, more, and more.
So I'll ask you a very difficult question, okay? And I'm saying it right now. It's like, asking Sachin Tendulkar which is his most favorite innings. So I'm going to
Hmm.
ask you something like that, right? I mean, so
Okay.
you've transformed, as you said, around 10,000 lives.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there was one or two or more cases which were really tough. I mean, you
Yeah.
really, given a choice, you'll probably rethink that case or rethink that kind of a situation again, or or you thought it took the best out of you in that sense. So which was the toughest case you handled? You need not name the person, of course, but
Yeah, of course. Of course.
uh if you can tell us, the toughest
So actually,
situation or
you're
case
right,
that you
Vipul. There are many.
correct.
There are really many, but I will speak to you about one of them.
Sure.
And this is really close to my heart because it changed me. That's the reason
Oh,
why.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll be interesting
So,
to hear.
so this was about, I mean, a client of mine referred this lady who was her neighbor, very frail, petite lady, maybe in her, what do you call it, 60s, early 60s, 61, 62 types. And husband had just divorced her, decided to part ways after, you know, 43 years of marriage.
Okay.
And this lady, being a homemaker, she had never signed a check. She didn't know what what finances were all about. She was all about home and hearth and children because that is what, that was the environment
Correct.
that she lived in. And
Hmm.
she was my client's neighbor, and my client wanted me to, just just consult with her. So I met this lady. We will call her Ba for
Okay.
the sake of, understanding.
Sure.
So I remember for the first couple of sessions, Ba didn't even know what was happening when I was asking her questions and, trying to prod and, just
True. True.
get to understand what exactly was she going through, what was the space she was in. And it takes a lot of time because these people, people like Ba have never really done something like this. They've never been exposed to it, and they don't know about talking their heart out to people who are strangers. And here I was, a stranger, and trying to dig into her life. and
Correct.
and yeah, I think about by 2 or 3 sessions, she kind of opened up to me. She started talking. Of course, it was very, very traumatic for her to share whatever she was going through. And but we started, every session was like a move, towards the positive. It was like almost like moving one step forward. And I remember in the fourth session, she came to me. She had, she'd made some beads like these, bracelet, and she
Ah.
got some for me. And I said, she said, "Beta, I made it." So I said, "Ba, how much did it cost? Let me pay you for it. If you've made it, I'll pay you for it." She says, "No, no, no, it's a gift and all." And then she said, "I have many at home." So I asked Ba, I said, "Ba, can you get some for me the next time?" and I'll see if my friends and all can, I can, give it to
Right.
my
Yeah.
friends and they can buy it off and all of that. And through our sessions, and we kept talking about all of these things while we were, having our sessions. And one day I told her, why don't you, she stayed in near Bhuleshwar, and I said, why don't you go to take the courage and go to one of the retailers out there and see whether they will buy it from you. And I also explained to her how she should speak and what she should do, etc. And Ba being Ba, she hesitated for, she didn't go for the first 2 days. And I remember I had to keep calling her and say, Ba, did you go? Did you go? And then she said, then she finally mustered courage and she went. She sold these. Okay, didn't get too much, but she was able to sell these, which kind of gave her the motivation. And then she started making more. Okay, she started
Okay.
making more. And when the demand started increasing, she couldn't cope up. So Ba had to
Right.
hire somebody to do that
Wow.
for her. Yes. And there's the same lady who's never signed a check. She didn't know what money,
Amazing.
handling money and
Amazing.
all was in that sense. Okay.
Okay.
And then one day she calls me up and she says that there's a letter from a lawyer. And of course, my client kind of helped her out and all of that. So her aunt had left property for her in Himachal.
Oh.
And she asked me, should I move there or should I stay here? Okay. And I can only guide them on the pros and cons, but eventually the
Yeah.
decisions need to be made by the client
By them.
themselves. I
Yeah.
cannot be
Absolutely.
making the decisions for them. So Ba took the decision of moving to Himachal.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
And there she set up her little business with two women who also, one was a widow and one was just like her, also divorced. Like she was not divorced, she was just separated. And the three of them started doing this. And on one of the occasions, there was an American who happened to meet them, and she bought a lot of the stuff, and she started, in her little way, I would say, exporting
Exporting. Wow.
in a
Okay.
tiny way. Okay, she was an Indian American, and I remember on her 63rd or 64th birthday, she said, Beta, I have one desire. Always in my life, I used to watch all these, shows and all of that. One desire is I want to go bungee jumping.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, I said, don't do that. I don't know whether your body can take it and, whether you should and stuff like that. She said, nahi, ji kar raha hai, beta.
Wow.
And
Okay.
she did
That's
it.
nice.
And she
Oh,
did it.
wonderful. Oh, wonderful. That's fascinating.
And just before her passing, she's no more now. Just before her passing, I think a year before her passing, she came back. She came to Bombay to kind of settle some things and all of that. And she wanted to meet me, and we met. And she came home. I opened the door, and the first thing she does when I open the door is she comes and she touches my feet.
Okay.
And I was completely blown, because, and I was like, I mean, what are you doing? I was embarrassed, I was shocked, I was all of that and everything. And that was to me the moment, Vipul, that I understood that the work that I do is no ordinary work.
Mm.
It is no work which is banal. It is work that can really make a difference. Every word that I say, okay, can make or break a person. So I need to really choose my words as well. I need to communicate in as much clarity as possible, which means I need to be in a kind of very grounded state when I'm dealing with
Right.
people. And she is my victory story, because she actually gave me the will and the, and the, she just, I think she gave me wings. She
Wow.
gave
Okay.
me wings.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure.
this is the most, I think, most close story to me of resilience, of faith in themselves. And I guess as a coach, this is what we want. We want the people that we are in touch with to actually fly free.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. I mean, yeah,
So
it's a very
here's
touching
to,
and a very powerful story.
absolutely. I mean,
And
come on, imagine 62 years old, living a certain life, and now that life no longer exists and you have to start from zero,
awesome.
right? And still to do it and win, on her
Yeah,
terms. And I
that's true.
think that
That's true.
is That to me
That
was
is
literally victories in your hands.
wow. Okay. So I'll
Yeah.
take two questions which have come, which are kind of
Yes.
related to what we are discussing.
Hmm.
So the first one is from Rahul Kumar. The question is, what's the best way to set boundaries when you're still figuring out who you are? Okay, what's the best way to set boundaries when you're still figuring out who you are? Okay, so that's question one.
Right.
The other one is from Anjali Singh. The question is, how do I find clarity in a world that constantly demands urgency and achievement? So both
I'll
are kind
take
of
Anjali's
related
question
in the sense.
first
Yeah,
and then
okay,
move to Rajesh's.
sure.
So, Anjali, thank you
And
for
if you
that
want me to
question.
repeat the,
Brilliant.
if you want me to repeat the question, please
Yeah,
ask
I
me.
will. I
That's
will.
fine.
I will. So I will
Yeah,
take
sure.
Anjali's first. I think the best way, to kind of have clarity in the world where everybody demands urgency and it's all chaotic, to be
Correct.
honest. Okay. What's urgent is actually somebody not doing their own job well and on time. So that is not up, that is not on you. And I think this is something
Right.
we need to understand because a lot of the times we get carried away in guilt. In guilt.
Hmm, hmm,
We're
hmm.
always guilty about not doing something and not being there for people because we have stopped what we used to do very beautifully as children, which was
Yeah.
the power of saying no. Try giving
Right.
your 1 year old or 2 year old something which they don't like. You
Correct.
may be the grandfather, you may be the CEO of Apple, you may be the president of the world, and they will still say no. They will still say
Correct.
no
Correct. Correct.
because anything
Absolutely.
that it doesn't vibe with their energy, they just know it's not for them and they will not do it. And I think this
Correct.
is something that we have forgotten, and I think we need to start bringing that back. We need to
Very
start
interesting.
working on the muscle which is called no.
Wow. That's a great insight.
Yeah, because we stopped doing that. Anybody says, "Are this is needed or whatever," and I want you to jump, and the only question we're asking them is how higher, how much higher.
Yeah. True.
That's it. And I remember I used to do this when I was in advertising. And now it's come to a point where if anything doesn't elevate my energy,
Mhm.
anything that doesn't elevate me, you know and make me feel great about it, if I'm going to if that if that requires if anything that requires me to be resentful, I'm not going to do it. You've got to have the courage to say no and create boundaries. you
Right.
know so I remember I was saying, in fact, I'll give Anjali an example. So there was a senior executive that I was coaching some months ago. And same thing, like everybody wants everything urgent. You know,
Correct.
what was needed yesterday is required. What was needed the day before yesterday is required now. Right.
Right.
So it's all become, that kind of, we're living in that kind of world. And
Yeah.
all I ask this gentleman to do is whenever somebody says, I need this, especially at 4 in the evening on a Friday evening, or just when you're leaving, on to go home, somebody says, I need this urgently. You need to just ask them, do you want this to be done well? Or do you, and can I'll do it. So don't say no. Don't say no, I won't do it. Say, I'll be happy to do it. I'll take this up first thing on Monday morning or first thing tomorrow morning. Because between now and the morning, nothing's really going to happen. And we all
Correct.
know it.
Yeah.
That proposal that you will share with them, it'll be lying in the inbox. कुछ नहीं करने वाले हैं लोग.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think we need to understand where we need to have a hard stop. So it's not up to them, it's up to us. If you don't create the boundaries, like you will not open the door to anyone in your house, right? Will you?
Mm,
You won't. You'll only open the
absolutely.
door to those who will bring in great energy or who you feel are needed in the house.
Correct.
Same way. This is just the same way, you know. And don't worry. I think we worry a lot that, oh my God, if we don't do this, we lose our job. There are other ways in which you can show your strengths. You can package your strengths and present it to people, to your bosses or people who matter. It's not through this. This is just
Mm,
one tiny thing. So, and it made a huge difference to him, because when he said that, can I share it tomorrow morning? And they said, no problem, morning, but 9:30 chahiye, boss. And he was like, no problem. I will come to the office at 8:30 and I will wrap it up by 9:30. And it was done. Unless you ask, it's not done. It's not given,
Correct.
So you have
Correct.
to have the courage to ask. And that is why I say, no BS.
True.
No BS.
So we'll take the other question
Yes.
which Rahul had. So,
Huh.
so his question is, what's the best way to set boundaries when you're still figuring out who you are? So, this is, I guess, a question for somebody who's still trying to, find himself or herself. Are there any boundaries that, they should
So
set?
ideally no boundaries.
Correct.
Because if you're finding yourself, you're seeking yourself, then just keep going with the flow. Just keep going with the flow. And whatever resonates with you in your heart, truly, without any analysis and paralysis in that analysis, I would say just go with it, because your heart is like the hotline to the universe. The universe is almost directing you and saying, yahan jao, wahan na jao. Iske saath jao, uske saath na jao. Your heart will speak with you. But give yourself the space to rest a little bit and respond to your heart.
So, Rahul, it's no boundaries. Okay. I mean, that's the short
Absolutely.
answer.
Why should you
Don't have
hate
boundaries.
yourself?
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
okay. So I'll take one more question.
Yeah.
This is from Siddhi Dubey.
Hmm.
I think you answered this partly a little earlier, but I'll still ask because
Yeah.
Siddhi's put it here. Yeah. So when someone says, I can't change, this is just how I am. And I'm sure you
Hmm.
get a lot of those, right? What
Hmm.
do you tell them?
So if somebody says, I can't change, that means they have not been shown that there are other ways in which they can make a difference. So it's what is important here is to understand, what do I really need? So they don't really know what they need. They think they know what they need. Because if they knew what they needed, then no matter what happens, you will bring about the change to get it. So for
Correct.
example, if you are, if you love pizza, okay,
Correct.
and you like only Joe's pizza or Paul's pizza or whatever,
Right.
no matter where Paul is, you will want to go and get pizza only from that. And if you're hungry and you desire that pizza, it may be 12 in the night, it may be whatever time, it may be,
It
2
is
kilometers away, 8 kilometers away, 20 kilometers away, you will make the effort of finding a way to get there. So people who say, I can't change, are the ones who actually don't know what they want, and therefore they're saying that they can't change, because everyone is capable of changing. Everyone is capable of changing. We've changed multiple times throughout our lives from the time we were tiny,
sure.
right? We've started liking a subject which earlier we didn't like, because now we have a great teacher.
True.
Constantly changing. So I think you're creating a block for your own self. You don't need to have what do you call it, humps created by anybody. The only person creating that is you. So the moment you break this barrier of I can't, I won't, yeah, you'll be able to shine. Because that is like a ceiling that you've kept on yourself. Nothing can move, because you're not allowing that ceiling to break. So if I were you, or if you know anyone like that, I would tell them, stop using words like can't, won't. These are all failure words, actually. They don't inspire you to win. They only take you down that spiral, which is not so
Down.
great.
Unknowingly, perhaps
Yeah,
you have kind of
unknowingly.
built
I'm
it
sure
into your,
nobody wants to do it knowingly,
of
unknowingly. And
course.
that is where they need somebody to kind of guide them, to say, hey, you know what? Somebody needs to show them the mirror, you know?
Yeah, nice. So, one question I always wanted to ask you, and this happens on my podcast quite regularly,
Hmm.
is like, and which you also spoke about a little earlier, is that connection to the universe.
Yes.
And the one person who's a constant on on the podcast, if you've heard the previous episodes, is Rhonda Bryan. And the
Yeah.
secret. I mean, when I say Rhonda Bryan, I mean the
Yeah. Yeah.
secret.
Yeah.
And here is the question of manifestation. And I know, and we've spoken earlier, and you also
Hmm.
spoken about manifestation. So, what is your take on manifestation? What's your uh, thinking about it?
Very simple. We've had this biggest race in our lives We've broken through millions of sperms and we are into this world, which
Right.
means we can win any race that we set our mind to. Any
Wow.
race.
Okay.
We are all born winners. We are born winners, you know. And I think that every time you think about anything, you need to look at what if it can happen for me and it is glorious, instead of looking at what if it can't happen for me and, such a drastic thing will happen. Because that thinking things will happen drastically and thinking things will happen gloriously requires the same energy.
Hmm.
Same energy. So why not create gardens instead of creating gutters?
Wow.
You know.
Okay.
So I think every word you speak is manifestation. You don't have to sit and affirm or anything. Every word you speak is manifestation. You say, hey, I'm coming for Vipul's podcast. That is manifestation. Being here at this podcast with all of you together, that is manifestation. Somewhere we all manifested it together. And, the universe just makes it happen. So choose your words. Are they words of victory or are they not? Because
Wow.
anything that resonates with victory, whether it's elevating, like you said, it's energizing, it's regenerating, whatever it is, the point is it will take you closer to where you are and lifts and makes you feel nice, isn't it? I've yet to feel, manifestation is all about that. Just keep asking for all the things and the
And it'll
universe will
keep
provide.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in BNI you used to tell the story about this eggs, right? I mean,
Yes. Oh my
you want to
God.
tell us about it? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
of
a
course,
fascinating
of
story. Yeah.
course. So this is about being like, Vipul says, super networker. I didn't know
Okay.
I was like a super networker, but like I said, I just wanted to make a difference to people's lives. It didn't matter who it was. So a new
Right.
member, old member, not so great member, doesn't matter to me. My thing is, can I at that moment uplift that person? And
Hmm.
I remember at one of the meetings, whatever, I must have done it with this gentleman. And this gentleman reaches out to me one day and he says, I have an ask. Okay, I have something that I need. And I said, yeah, okay, shoot, I'll see what I can do. And I was like this, I'm going to make it happen for you. And he says, Farzana, I need an ostrich egg. And the moment he said an ostrich egg, I was like, in my mind, I'm like, दिमाग खराब हो गया क्या बंदे का? Ostrich egg मांग रहा है मुंबई में, कहाँ से लाऊंगी मैं, किससे कनेक्ट करूंगी? And he says, no, please, this is really important. See if you can do it. And if anyone I know who can do it, it's you. बस
Wow.
बस जैसे ही उसने ये कहा मुझे, I remember, I was like, man, now तो it's like, you know, मेरी,
करना ही पड़ेगा.
yeah, it's my reputation on the block. I gotta do it. This guy
Okay.
has put me in such high esteem and so much pressure, isn't it? And I said,
Right.
okay. And I just said to him, I'll do my best. So I never use this word, I try, Vipul. I've never used this word in my this thing. I don't use this. I try. I say I'll do my best. And I said, I'll give it a shot. So
Right.
quickly, I put it up in groups. I sent out messages here and there and whatever, nothing. And I was like, man, I got to call this guy and tell him kuch hua nahi. And he called up as usual. And he said, Kya hua, Farzana? Is there anything? He pinged me. And I said, no, I'm still working on it. Please give me some space. And then lo and behold, about 2 days later, someone messaged me and says there is a member who has a mini zoo. It's out of Mumbai. Okay.
Hmm.
So would you like to connect with him? And I said, yeah, I'll do. I don't mind. So I called this gentleman up and all of that. He said, wow, what an ask. I said, yeah, imagine what an ask. And he says, I don't have an ostrich egg, but Farzana, I can arrange an emu egg. Now, the ostrich and emu eggs are similar. There's
Yeah.
really not much of a difference. They're like so big.
Correct.
So I said, great. And I said, so when can you give it to me? He said, hold on. I can't just give it to you. There is a protocol. There are
Hmm.
some forms that need to be filled and all of that because it's not one, pigeon's egg or crow's egg or whatever, right?
Correct.
It's,
Correct.
it's, it's an exotic bird, so to speak. So I said, okay, fine. So he said, who wants it? So I said, well, there is a member who's asked for it. So he said, why does he want it? I said, man, good question. I never asked him. So I went back to this guy and he said, by the way, why do you want it?
Why do you want
And
to
he
ask? Yeah.
says, and he said, I want to gift my fiance something special for her birthday. So I'm going to do a carving on that egg. So apparently, because the egg is thick compared to the eggs that we have of the hen, this is a big egg, and you can actually carve on this egg. And he wanted to create a carving specially for her and give it to us. So he wanted one ostrich egg. And this guy, so finally I went back to him and I said, hey, this is the reason why. And he said, no problem. I'll be able to reach it to him in about maybe, 8 or 10 days. I connected those, both of them. He got the egg, he did the
Awesome.
carving, and they lived happily ever after. And my God, so this is like the most phenomenal story for me because I was pretty new in BNI at that time, but it kind of gave me a lot. I remember when I shared this with Dr. Ivan Meisner, he was completely floored. He was like, I don't believe this. This has really happened. I was like, yes, 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 it happened. So yeah.
Amazing. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, manifestation in a different way, right? I mean,
The thing is, you need to ask. If you ask, it's possible. If you don't ask, nothing's possible.
ask and you shall receive, right?
Absolutely.
So you said you're a super networker, right? I mean, super networker. So tell us your experience as a business networker, because this whole podcast is about business networking.
Yeah.
So you've been a member of BNI now for, I think, 10 years
11
plus,
years. 11.
11 years. So tell us your experience. And then you've been a networker before also. I mean, it's not like you began networking with BNI.
Mm.
So tell us your experience as a business networker and specifically as a BNI member.
Okay, so one thing is, you're right. I mean, I've always been a people's person. We call
Yeah.
networkers actually people's person. And
Right.
that's the reason why I guess I was in account management in, advertising, because I just knew how to, work around people. I understood, their emotions. I understood the psychology intuitively. I mean, I didn't really do any psychology course or something to understand what's going on with my art director and my creative director or my client or
Correct.
something. But somehow I had this intuitively. I knew that, hey, you know what? uh, in everything in life. So I also got to know this later. It said that people who are well networked are at least 3 times more influential than people who aren't.
Right.
And this is so true, Vipul, because when I pivoted from my business, my from advertising to the work that I'm doing today as a coach and trainer, I I understood the value of the goodwill that I had created, but just by being good and human and
Mm.
caring with all the people that I met in my advertising world. So I'd gone to HDFC, the branch, I mean, the office, the HDFC Bank office in uh, Churchgate
Yeah.
for some work. Okay. The guard over there remembered me.
Yeah.
And I've left advertising like almost 12 years ago. And it was so heartening. It's so heartening. And the reason why I say this to you is because, we feel that networking is about, so networking and connections are two different things.
Right.
And we get confused, first of all, between the two. Okay, we get into a space. Networking is what, hey, you know what, I'm going into this place and I'm going to connect with this one and connect with that one because this one is useful to me and that one is useful for me. That is networking.
Right.
But building connections is going deeper, and doing it because you care about the person, not
Mm.
because you're going to get something out of the person.
Mm.
And I
True.
think this is the difference that people need to understand, because we all go into networking with the need for, for others serving our need rather than vice versa. And that is why in BNI also you say, okay, you join BNI to build a relationship. The business happens because of the relationship,
Because of the relationships. Absolutely.
right? So I think this,
Mm.
so networks to me are transactional.
Right.
Okay. Connections are where connections run deep. They're genuine. There is effort put in connections. And I think that matters, you know, and so networking is actually about, not just business cards and whatever. It's about soul currency, because it's only when souls connect that I want to move the end, move the move the earth to kind of make things happen for you.
Mm.
Right? The people who take you on power dates, the people who actually are creators in referrals for you, are the
Correct.
ones who actually have a soul currency with you. They
Yeah.
genuinely want you to win.
Absolutely. They want you to
They
win.
genuinely want you to win. So they'll go out of the way to do things. And the funny thing is, you know what? You start with connections and the network grows automatically.
Correct.
Isn't it?
I agree with you.
And I think the moment you flip this and you start looking at it this way, so like, I don't know when was the last time I actually carried my business cards. I don't give my business cards. And I'm not saying this because I'm being very prideful or whatever. No, 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 not at all. But I feel if I'm connected with you, and I'll just take your number. And I won't just take your number and keep it around. I will text you the next day and say, hey, hi, how are you doing? And and you must have said something to me that perhaps connected me to you. So maybe it could be our love for cats, maybe because I love
Perhaps,
cats.
yeah, yeah.
Or it could be, a love for music or a love for traveling. And I'll probably ping you and ask you, hey, what happened to that thing? Or, when you went for this trip, how was it? Or whatever. So it's actually about building deeper connections. Otherwise, matlab kya hai? We are just meeting, exchanging cards, going away. So that's not how you build a soul currency.
Okay.
So I say this in a little prideful way. I say that when I show up as Farzana, not a pitch deck with heels.
Wow. Okay. Superb. Superb. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you know.
yeah,
hmm. So it's all about
that's
collaboration,
cool.
friendships, and that is how it all builds, right? You know, because when people see you as not coming in to take something from you, they want to extend their arms and embrace you.
True. I mean, this that's
Hmm.
that's absolutely true. So Farzana, I mean, we're closing into the hour, so I have a couple of
Hmm.
more points I wanted to talk about
Sure.
on business networking. So one question I wanted to ask you, you're doing possibly all the roles, right, in BNI that you can think of. I mean,
Hmm.
you take trainings, you are, managing chapters as director consultant, and now I think you're
Launch
senior director,
chapters.
lots of chapters as senior director consultant, and
Yeah.
you are you know you've done all of these. So how has this contributed to your business? The reason I'm asking is a lot of people shy away from taking roles outside of
Uh,
what they do. So
hmm.
how has it contributed to you? So if other BNI members are listening to this, and you've done so many other things, you launched chapters also, so
Yeah.
it's not like you've done only one or two roles.
Hmm.
You've done possibly all the roles that you can do.
Hmm.
And so how has this helped you in your own business and your growth as an individual?
Okay, so I'll break it down into the different roles that I've done.
Sure.
Okay. So as a member, when I joined BNI, I think as a member, what I learned is the ability to trust people with my reference. So this was not there earlier.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, it was not there. In advertising, where do we sit and throw away our, connections and all? We are very cagey about it. We protect it
Correct.
as if it was Beyonce's phone book. so, so this is something that I learned that the trust. Okay, trusting people. Then, as a leadership team or in the regional role, one important thing is what I learned is also influence without authority. You don't have to be authoritative, domineering to create influence. This is a big learning for me from
Hmm.
every mentor of mine in BNI, whether it was Hemu, Reed, Mac, and the various trainers who've trained us, and Adi, all of them. What I've learned from them, and Nikhil, etc. What I've learned from them is you don't really need to throw your weight, your authority to influence people.
Correct.
This was like the biggest learning for me.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
It also meant being on, taking up roles was, Dr. Ivan Meisner always says, 2 eyes, 1 mouth, and 2 ears, 1 mouth. So listen and observe carefully and more than you speak.
Right.
Because it's only when you start listening to people. So when you meet people, also start listening to them instead of starting your own spiel. Hey, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm so great at this and I'm so great at this. I mean, everybody actually wants to only talk about themselves. How about giving the
Right.
other person the opportunity to talk? Because that will suddenly shift the dynamics. Yeah. And that's how you also build communities, right? When you listen, when you connect, etc. The other thing is training also helped me sharpen my craft
Hmm.
as a member,
Right.
because everything that I was training time and again, I knew that I had to keep applying it as well. So that was amazing. And launching taught me how to ask. I was very
Okay.
shy of asking. But in launch, we shamelessly ask, right? Hey, I'm looking for someone. I'm launching this chapter. I'm looking for a website developer. I'm looking for, a graphic designer, blah, blah, blah. I have no shame in asking that. And I
Wow.
think
Okay.
this really broke that barrier for me. And today I am being, like I say, with great humility, with a lot of gratitude. Gratitude is a big part of my life. It's I work with almost 160 chapters in India.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I give business to them as well, and I gain business from them as well. And this has just happened like it's been, natural. It's been
Hmm.
organic. It's not like I go to a chapter meeting and say, oh my God, ab yahan pe kaun mujhe business dene wala hai, or whatever. I don't do that.
Correct, correct.
But like I say, once you go there and you help
Bounce.
people, automatically then people reach out to you and say, hey, there is a requirement for this and we really want you. And whether it transpires into business or not, that's
Correct.
immaterial. The fact is somebody thought of you. So I think that's something uh you know that really helped me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, one last question.
Hmm.
And this question has come from Anand Sharma on the community. So his question is, what's the one mantra or phrase you live by?
Thank you, Anand. This is a favorite phrase. I think everyone in BNI also knows it. I feel of all the things you ever win, a heart must mean the most.
Okay.
पैसे वैसे सब कुछ आ जाएंगे, कमा लोगे, कोई कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है। अगर कोई भी काम दिल से ना किया ना, तो वो क्या काम किया? So I think you just need
Fantastic.
to use your heart, because eventually we are only dealing with people at every point in time.
So Anand, that's the mantra that uh, Farzana lives by, and that's mantra with a lot of us live by. And on that fantastic note, thank you, Farzana, for coming on the podcast today. You made this 50th episode really special. Thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thank you so
Again,
much, Vipul. It's been a pleasure. And thank you to all of you who posted questions and who are going to be watching this as well. Tahe dil se shukriya. Bless you. Keep shining. Victories in your hands.